Ladies and gentlemen, be here on this channel at 8 p.m. Pacific tonight for the live stream. I have live streams every evening. You're going to love it. Be here 8 p.m. Pacific this evening. Here's what Lindsey Graham, Trump talked about at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend. New York Post. Senator Lindsey Graham visited former President Trump at his Mar-a-Lago resort over the weekend in what he described as an effort to mend the fractured Republican Party. It's not fractured. President Trump controls the GOP. There's no doubt about it. The Lincoln Project, the immoral. The people who, anyone who retweeted the Lincoln Project has to be the most immoral person. To retweet, to share the views of former Bush-era foreign policy hawks that got us into never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts and quagmires that ruined the lives of millions. That's not hyperbole. Look at Bush's foreign policy. Was there anything good that came from Bush, George W. Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld? Anything good? They had the most horrendous tenure. Bush's presidency was the worst presidency in the history of this country, by far. Got us into never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts, destabilized entire regions of the world. We can go on forever. There's so much I can talk about, but because of the YouTube policies, I can't get into them. But the Lincoln Project people went after veterans, Max Cleland, Senator Max Cleland, Rick Wilson, one of the co-founders of the Lincoln Project, along with Weaver, who is now accused of the most despicable acts, tried to disparage and paint as disloyal Senator Max Cleland, a triple amputee Vietnam veteran, a hero, who spoke out against Bush's foreign policy, rightfully so. So when you hear this absurd, like, really nefarious article in The Atlantic stating that Trump tried to disparage fallen Americans. How do we know? Because a writer at The Atlantic, because a quote-unquote journalist said that quote is attributed to him. No evidence, no audio tape, no videotape, no transcript, no nothing. No evidence, zero evidence, but you never got you never got caution labels or disclaimers on social media. There was never, this claim has been debunked. There's no evidence for the claim. It's, oh, well, that's journalism. If it's allegation or gossip or hearsay or innuendo or anything fabricated against Trump, that's journalism. That's journalism, yes. He said the pandemic was a hoax. No, he didn't. He said ingest Clorox. No, he didn't. He said there were fine people. No, he didn't. They were like most of the quotes that get he admitted to wrongdoing in the he admitted to an actual criminal act in the hot mic. No, he didn't. The criminal report was actually leveled against Biden. So they take these things and they've created this aura around Trump when they're the ones who are guilty, likely guilty. You look at the Lincoln Project, you look at Biden and his past. What did President Trump do that's worse than destroying a country with a failed NATO intervention? So, and that's what Biden, Clinton, and President Obama did with their NATO intervention in Libya. But here, the two just talked about the 2022 cycle, Graham explained, adding he's very involved in helping the team win. Okay, Lindsey Graham is still in between the Never-Trumpers and the majority of the Republican Party that likes President Trump. Okay, 90%, he still has an 80 to 90% approval rating within the Republican Party because he presided over the Abraham Accords, because he presided over the beginning of peace between North and South Korea, because Trump presided over record low unemployment throughout most of his tenure. These are all facts. We had record low unemployment throughout most of President Trump's tenure. The states with the highest unemployment rates in this country are Democratic-run states. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Tell your friends about this channel because nobody's talking about this. Go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's actually in each one of the description sections. Go see the highest unemployment rates and the lowest unemployment rates. The lowest unemployment rates are red states. The highest unemployment rates are blue states. Not Trump's fault. So when they say, well, he left us with the most horrible economy. No, Democrats like Cuomo in New York mismanaged not only the economy, but the pandemic. They have the worst outcomes in terms of the pandemic, the worst outcomes in terms of the economy, because they tanked their economies, and still it didn't give them the desired results with the pandemic. But President Trump is going to, he's going to run and create the strategy for 2022. Whether or not the Republican leadership at this moment agrees with his strategy or ideology, he's going to craft and design the 2022 strategy, because you're going to have primaries. So number one, you'll have representatives and senators primaried within the Republican primaries before they go up against Democrats. So the people aligned with a more populist message will win out. Trump's foreign policy was not an isolationist foreign policy. It was a populist, more of a libertarian foreign policy, which is why I don't understand the Libertarian Party, like at least the Green Party, if they go up against Democrats and they take votes away, they're actually pushing for policies Democrats don't want. Libertarians in the Libertarian Party, the foreign policy is more of a libertarian foreign policy than anything Biden would engage in. But anyway, President Trump removed Americans from never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts. That's what Devin Nunes, Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, people like Ron DeSantis, Richard Grenell, Doug Collins, these people are Trump Republicans. They're more populist in their message. They don't revere corrupt intelligence officials. They don't care about what media thinks of them. And look, the Lincoln Project tried to go after Jim Jordan for for him working in the same location as horrendous allegations, when the co-founder himself and all the other co-founders abandoned ship like rats. Like rats abandoning a ship. Just figure of speech. Imagine the co-founder of the Lincoln Project accused of the most despicable activity, and the other co-founders probably knowing. But you never get Bill Kristol for the, what is the other Lincoln Project type organization he runs? You never get him saying, well, gee, what did Steve Schmidt know and Rick Wilson? What did they know? What did they know? You think nobody knew what Weaver was doing? That nobody talked about, and they were in close proximity. It wasn't like Jim Jordan where like they were accusing, like he was not involved in any way, shape, or form with the allegations. But see, again, they always accuse others of what they're guilty of. They always accuse others of what they're guilty of. Madam Secretary gets millions from the Clinton, the Uranium One, giving millions into the Clinton Foundation. Uranium One then being owned by Putin. Oh, it's not a big deal. A dossier that she purchases and the DNC purchases against Trump. Oh my goodness, we have to investigate for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And then they're investigating the potential for crimes in the Southern District of New York. When Deutsche Bank gave Trump $2 billion, like his brand name alone was lucrative for Deutsche Bank. You think they're going to give loans without making interest on the loans? You think this, one of the biggest banks on the planet, is going to just engage in a decades-long relationship with somebody and not make money? So it's like, well, he inflated his net worth. Well, that's a matter of contention. That's a contentious issue. A real estate developer could say, hey, wait a second, my holdings are worth a lot more. And then the bank can say, nah, that's not true. And then a journalist can say, well, we did research, and a lot of people say the holdings are worth, X amount of dollars. It doesn't matter. You'd have to prove in a court of law that he deliberately, in this deceptive plot, deceived Deutsche Bank. But they were fine with President Trump's, like, any discrepancy they had in terms of what their valuation of his holdings, of his real estate holdings, and whatever else he was worth, because his brand, the Trump brand, was enough for them. The Trump brand became part of Americana, like Kleenex or Xerox or, well, now I guess nobody really knows. The younger generation doesn't know what Xerox is, probably. But you have a situation, ladies and gentlemen, where the Lincoln Project is a political liability. It always was. And in 2022, like Adam Kinzinger, for example, he wants to become the new Lincoln Project. He voted alongside Trump 90.2% of the time, according to 538. So it's not about policies. It's never been about policies. The Republicans like Trump's policies. The never-Trumpers don't like his personality. That's why the Lincoln Project wanted his vice president, Trump's vice president, to run in 2024. It's never about policies. They like the tax cuts, the foreign policy achievements. They're fine with prison reform legislation. It's not like the old Republican Party. Van Jones stated that Trump and Republicans were at the forefront of prison reform legislation. So what does that make? Like, Democrats, if they weren't propped up by every possible conceivable advantage, if they weren't propped up by every possible conceivable advantage, from Hollywood to social media to corrupt intelligence officials to newspapers around the country to cable news, if they didn't have every single conceivable advantage, their ideas alone would never keep them afloat. The left would completely break off. And you have a situation where the Republican Party is the reason that Democrats control discourse in this country. You have people like the former Lincoln Project. The Lincoln Project imploded, so they're no longer they're a political liability. They're not viable anymore in terms of trying to serve as the moral foundation. Gee, you were probably an immoral person if you retweeted the Lincoln Project. Or I'm kind of being facetious there. But that's the way Democrats think. They think that, like, you see, the Lincoln Project, these are good Republicans. They don't like Trump. You see, even his own Republican Party doesn't like Trump. You see? It's like, that's not the case. They're never Trumpers. Richard Burr and Paul Ryan and all these people like John McCain, they said, oh my God, look what Trump said about McCain. Look what the Lincoln Project said about Max Cleland. Look what Hillary Clinton said about Tulsi Gabbard. Look what the entire political establishment tried to do to Michael Flynn. What did Michael Flynn do? General Michael Flynn was an honorable man, did nothing but have a different opinion. Never worked with Russia. Never lied about any consulting or lobbying fees. Never needed to register as a foreign agent. He was only indicted. Then they said, well, we're going to get you under the Logan Act. Then they said, if you don't plead, we're going to go after your family. I mean, these people were despicable. The government, Democrats love government power when it works for them. But when it doesn't work for them, oh my God, Trump's a tyrant. He's a tyrant. He's a despot. He's a despot. And then if you say, well, what did Michael Flynn do wrong? What did Trump do wrong? They did a lot of bad things. Russia. There's a lot of evidence that they worked with Russia. There's zero evidence. Nobody was ever indicted. Facebook ads didn't swing the election. And then they're the ones who talk about debunked theories. And then they wonder, like, okay, I was against the whole LMNOP nonsense, Q nonsense from day one. I was telling people 2+ years ago, it's a dangerous message board hoax. Don't listen to it. You ever wonder why Democrats never wanted to find out who started that nonsense? It would be interesting. It would be interesting to find out why Democrats never want to just find out who was, because thank God nobody listens to it anymore. But who was perpetuating, who was writing on the other side of the message boards, Patriots, the arrests are coming, where, I debated Jordan Sather. You can watch the debate. Okay, I proved within that debate it was a complete irrational, absurd, ludicrous hoax. Why don't Democrats find out who started the whole thing? Because you have Washington Post articles. Now they're obsessed over it. I told you it would be a way to disparage 74 million Americans. Certain people didn't listen. The vast majority of my viewers do not listen to that nonsense. But I told you it would be horrible. It would lead to a dangerous, horrible thing. And still people, but the interesting thing is Democrats are obsessing over it now, but they don't find out who was perpetuating that nonsense. Who are the people on the other end of the message boards? That's interesting how Democrats don't really care. Jeff Sessions was the worst, you couldn't find a more disloyal, the Attorney General, he was an Attorney General who investigated the president who made him Attorney General. I mean, what could you couldn't get, and then when they say trust Sessions, what? This is the opposite. They literally, the messages were trying to deceive people, impressionable people, giving them the opposite analysis that they should have listened to. But anyway, the next 2 years will be Trump building support or gaining in influence over the Republican Party because of achievements, not because of some personality cult. The cult exists among Democrats who obsess over Trump's personality. It's not the other way around. I don't care. If anything, I would want President Trump to tone it down. He should never have insulted LeBron James. He should never have insulted NFL athletes. He should never have done those things because it created a divide that didn't need to be there, that overshadowed, President Trump allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever. He signed prison reform legislation. He focused on economic opportunity zones. Okay, now that's overshadowed, unfortunately, in terms of media, maybe not in terms of impact. The impact is very good. But in terms of media, they've erased they've tried to, it helped media erase all of his accomplishments. And that's the issue. President Trump needs to spend the next 2 years and 4 years, when he's focusing on retaking the House, he needs to spend the next 2 years and 4 years he needs to spend the next 2 years and 4 years focusing on his accomplishments, trying to communicate his accomplishments. They spent every single day obsessing over our democracy and our republic. It's now they're governing. How have they made the country better? Because you don't have the obsessive theatrical performance art of the White House press corps going after Trump. I mean, where are these people now? The White House press corps, now you have people separated by 20 feet and they're so docile and nice. Where were these people with Trump? I mean, President Trump couldn't have had 5 or 6 friendly journalists. Where were these people? It was a whole bunch of angry, apoplectic, liberal activists / journalists. One person said, "Are you going to apologize for all the lies you told?" Did they ask President Obama to apologize for his Libya intervention or drinking Flint water or all the lies that he told? What did Trump do that's worse than the NATO intervention? I want to know. What did Trump do that's worse? Anyway, give me your thoughts below. It's unbelievable. You have Lindsey Graham meeting with President Trump, and what Trump needs to do is he needs to get Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, people like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell more on his side. Even Mitch McConnell, you might say, well, Mitch McConnell, who needs Mitch McConnell? It's you need those people because they were open. They were open to President Trump. They were open to President Trump.